We're on a hiatus, so we get a little bit of a shorter segment, so we got to cram everything in real quick. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I'm one of your hosts, Frank Johnson, co-host of the show here and host of the Range Report, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. To my right, Michael Vasquez, Dragon of New York, New York's only true independent journalist, behind the enemy lines in what is a city gone mad, and Dal Grimm, our resident lunatic from. He's also from New York, joining us this evening. But he's from a more normal,
a more normal and civilized area.
Yeah, more normal part of it.
Gentlemen,
how
don't let
are
him
you this
kid you.
evening?
All right.
Well, for being all quiet on the Western Front so far, being the operative term. Other than that, not bad. Noticed a couple of things interesting today in the news about the big beautiful bill that we might get into tonight, and other than that, just working hard. Looking forward to Independence Day. Actually, I do want to shout out to what is her name? The lady that runs the Freedom Society. Let's see. Where is it? I can tell you in just a moment.
You're doing good there. You're doing good.
Today is actually Independence Day on the 2nd. And that's because there was a resolution that was voted on. It's called the Lee resolution. And there was actually a very good piece on X that was done by, give me 1 second.
All prepared and everything. I love it.
Hey, I just walked through the door. So
yeah, he's got windows pulled up, but he don't remember where he opened them.
Yeah, I gotta grab hold of it here.
While you're doing that, I do want to thank you. I want to say thank you, because what you did is you started off the right way. You said you wanted to wish everybody a happy Independence Day.
That's correct.
That is what I think a lot of people forget when July 4th comes rolling around. You always hear everybody, happy 4th of July, happy 4th of July. You might as well say happy 12th of December. The date itself is meaningless. What the date represents is everything. And
Chrissy Ann Hall.
Chrissy Ann Hall. And when the 4th of July rolls around every year, I make it a point to specifically say happy Independence Day. Because I think a lot of people have gotten so used to the idea of just the barbecue, the day off, and all the rest of the festivities that they forget exactly what Independence Day represents and what it meant to not only us as a country but to the rest of the world. That document that was signed by 56 individuals was not just a document that freed a nation, or that lit the fires of revolution, but it lit the fires of light for freedom around the world. And all the countries that have looked to us in one way or another, most of them, unfortunately, because they need money, a lot of them have looked to us to be that guiding light of freedom. And without the 4th of July being truly known as Independence Day, that would not be something that could happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, in 2 days, here's your official Independence Day, so happy Independence Day. But today is, as Dal now has his windows open, I'm sure.
Yes. So why we want to celebrate
the 2nd?
July 2nd? And that's because of the Declaration was not the cause, it was the announcement of independence. So the cause of independence actually came from a Virginia delegate in 1776 on June 7th, Richard Henry Lee. And Chris Ann writes that it was a bold 3-part legislative act declaring the colonies were no longer subject to the British Crown. And then it was for nearly a month, this proposal was debated. And then on July 2nd, 12 of the 13 colonies voted to ratify it. There was one abstention. Can you guess who that was?
New York.
It was New York. Correct. They abstained pending direction from their constituents. At that moment, the colonies legally became free and independent states. It was 2 days later that the Declaration of Independence on July 4th was published and announced broadly throughout the colonies. And that's why July 2nd is actually the official legal birth of the nation, but it isn't until the 4th that everybody basically knows about it. So by then we were already declared independent of Britain. By the 2nd, we were legally independent from Britain, and now on the 4th we announce our independence. So the 4th is just the pronouncement day. The 2nd is actually our celebration for Independence Day. So in essence, this entire week should be off as a national holiday.
Actually, none of it should be, but that's a different thing. I think one of the most important things, going back to what Frank was mentioning, and also addressing what you're saying, is that the lack of civics, the lack of knowledge of the public, which has been taught to us. We've been trained to not think about or understand our history, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. We're not supposed to have any input on that. We're merely supposed to accept what we've been told about it and how we've been told about it. And that's why people don't know about July 2nd. They don't know about any of our history anymore. Many people don't know anything about what the Declaration of Independence says, the Constitution, the amendments. They have no idea. They just know, oh, this is a day off.
Right.
Because they haven't been taught that. They haven't had opportunity or reason to read that. And nowadays, kids can't read cursive. So that it's not like they can read the original documents. They have to read some reinterpretation of it. Right. Hopefully an honest one, but usually, very often nowadays, not. And so we get, and especially when we have people like Zoran Mamdani and AOC, the Democratic Socialists of America, and other progressive organizations that are trying to actively either destroy the Constitution or to rewrite either in part or in whole all of it. So that's part of the reason why. And it's kind of scary. And I mean, we're seeing this on every level. You've got, again, AOC and the Progressive Squad, people like Hakeem Jeffries that are deeply involved with that on the local level. You got people like Zoran Mamdani. You have India Walton up in Albany. You have people like, we're seeing this across the country. Yeah, organizations like the Antifa and what they've been doing. So it's I'm not surprised that people don't know. I'm saddened that people don't know.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of things that people don't know, you speak about the original documents, and we talk about the Declaration of Independence. Now, I'm sure at some point, most kids, at least from my neck of the woods, had all at one time or another made a pilgrimage to Washington, D.C. And we've gone to the National Archives. So this is when I was younger. We would go to the National Archives and we would see, under bulletproof glass, our Declaration. And flanking the Declaration of Independence would be documents like the Emancipation Proclamation, the U.S. Constitution, the Magna Carta, and so forth and so on. But when it comes to the Declaration itself, the Declaration that we see is only one copy of the Declaration of Independence. There was something called the broadside documents. There were an estimated 200 copies of the Declaration of Independence that were produced in that time period because they had to be disseminated throughout the colonies.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the one copy that was signed and that we still have on display. Because you remember, as it's when they speak about John Hancock, saying that he had to write his name large enough so that King George could see it without his spectacles.
Yeah.
Well, how could King George see the document if there was only one? One of those documents had to be sent to Great Britain so they could see for themselves that the 13 colonies had declared their independence, and it had to be one of the originals, and those are one of the broadside documents, to which, of an estimated 200 that were produced, only 26 are currently known to exist.
Wow.
So if you are ever at a yard sale or at a garage sale, especially in and around any of the original 13 colonies, and you find an old painting or an old portrait or something, and behind it or on the back of it happens to be a copy of the Declaration of Independence, if it doesn't say a reproduction by the national, have it looked at. Have it looked at, because I believe the last one of the broadsides that was sold for well over $2 million.
Oh, easily.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's 174 of these things still floating around out there that we have record were produced. We just don't know where they are. Now, maybe in the 249 plus years that we've been a country, many of these I'm sure have succumbed to elements and fire and destruction and ruin and everything else like that. But there still are out there. There has to be a number of originals that are maybe still rolled up in their original leather scabbard that they used to transport them, and remember, these things aren't paper. They're printed on vellum. They were written on vellum, which is a natural
leather
product.
It's basically a leather.
Yeah, it's the thinnest leather you'll possibly get. And so if you do find something that looks suspiciously like the Declaration of Independence signed by 56 names that you can't read because you can't read script anymore, do yourself a favor and go have it appraised.
Well, that would be interesting for people who do house hunting and all that. But the majority of people don't live in houses, don't pass things down generation to generation. And most people have never made it to Washington, D.C. I can tell you, none of the schools in the Bronx sent anyone to Washington, D.C. to see the Declaration. That didn't happen. Never happened. So, and it's sad because more people should. And it's something that I've done a lot of traveling personally, but honestly, most people never leave this. I believe it's a 1 mile radius, 1 to 2 mile radius of their home. The overwhelming majority never get past a mile away.
It's funny. It's funny because I remember. Do you remember when Glenn Beck did the Restoring America rally in Washington D.C.? It was called the 9/12 rally. It was during Obama's first year, when they were still trying to ram Obamacare through everybody's throat, and there were some nearly 2 million people that showed up at the mall on Washington D.C. Mm-hmm. I was there. Lori was there. Pete, who's been on the show, he was there. A number of other people that I know were there. What I found amazing about that rally were two things. One, when it was over, the National Mall was spotless.
That's normal for a right wing.
Right. There was not a stitch of garbage anywhere except in garbage pails. And the other thing that I found amazing is that when we were there for that rally, we stood online at the National Archives for over 3 hours just so we could walk past the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. There was just as big a line. We actually didn't even realize we were online for it. That's how long the line was. We didn't know what we were online for. We were going to go see them. We just didn't know we wound up on the line. That's how many thousands and thousands of people that were there, not only to attend the day, but to pay homage and respect to the documents that founded our nation. And to see tens of thousands of people online for that was just astounding. Now, I've been to Washington, D.C. several times since then, just as passing through or going by had something to do in the area where there wasn't an event or a rally. And the line for the National Archives is zero.
Yeah. Because, well, again, this is not something that's being taught to generations anymore. They don't get taught civics. They don't learn about our legislative history or our documentation. They aren't taught the original intent or meaning of the words, or even the current meanings of these words. And a great example of the failure of the education system right now is Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. and look at her. When you look at what she wrote in the most recent dissent in it really isn't the birthright executive order case. The case is Trump versus CASA, CASA. That's the actual case, which everyone in the news media called the birthright case, but it's not. This was about universal injunctions. This is any judge anywhere in America saying that the president can't do what the president says or is authorized to do. And that's something that's very, very new. I mean, like the last 30 years is really the only time in the history of America, 250 years, where we've been seeing this happen. Never could happen before. No one believed the judges, low-level judges, had that power. And now the Supreme Court confirmed it. And Ketanji Brown Jackson, I don't know. Did you guys read this, her dissent?
I haven't had an
I
opportunity
read
to
the
look at it.
I read the rebuttals of her dissent, and they were scorching.
Yeah, they should be. Okay, most people don't read, and even myself, and I'm a political junkie, and I don't read every decision by the Supreme Court. But occasionally, on the big issues, I do. And this was about something that says, okay, you can go out, shop, and pick any judge you want from a brand new judge, which has happened, and in this case did happen, a brand new judge who's been in the job 6 months, knows nothing about being a judge, and they can stop the president because politics. So Ketanji Brown Jackson decided, unlike any other Supreme Court justice ever, to be an activist. She literally wrote her decision is activism, judicial activism. It's the same kind of thing that you would hear from members of Antifa. You would expect it from Patrice Colors or Kendi or any of those activists that you know of. You would expect the same thing she wrote to be there. It's her personal feeling and has nothing to do with law or the Constitution or legal precedents. That's not in there. It's her talking about her feelings about politics, which has no place as a judge and even less so as a Supreme Court justice. And you can just compare the first two paragraphs. And I actually did this on my Sunday live stream. And I read through the first two paragraphs of her decision versus any other Supreme Court justice, and you can see the difference. It is unprofessional. It is ignorant of the law. It is activism. And honestly, I'm not surprised. She was educated to hate America. She was educated to be a progressive, to want to rewrite the Constitution and our rights and freedoms. And she wasn't the best person. Remember, Biden had many restrictions. He didn't get the best person. He didn't even get the best black person or the best woman or the best black woman. His restrictions were they had to be a woman, black, a Democrat. They had to also be younger and a federal judge. Now, there were 11 women, according to CNN at the time in 2022. There were 11 women that fit that whole profile, all of these limitations. So by the fact that there are limitations, you're not getting the best person.
Yeah.
Point blank, you can't get the best person if you have limitations on who you can look at. But of the people they had, Ketanji Brown Jackson was the worst because she had the least time as a federal judge and the most number of decisions that were overturned out of all 11 women, with everyone having some of them decades of experience. She had least time in, the most decisions overturned. The reason why she got it, she was the youngest. That's why she's a Supreme Court justice. And it shows, and it absolutely shows. She's an embarrassment.
I wonder if we can get a list of the other 10 women that were up for the post and interview them and ask
11.
them, 11. How do you feel knowing that this is the woman that was approved for this appointment and not you?
No. We know what would be. One, we do have the list because, like I said, CNN provided the list. We in 2022, everyone knew what the list was of the people who could fit the criteria. There was only 11 of them, and we know every one of their names. They would all, but they're all activists. They're all progressive and or Democrat, deep Democrat. So they'll all tell you that it's the best thing that ever happened because she's a black woman in the Supreme Court. That's their criteria. That's what they're judging based on. Not because she's the best. She's a black woman. She's educated. She's a judge. So she deserved it because we need a black woman on the Supreme Court. That's their reasoning.
What little I saw.
Good.
What little I saw of the that I willfully read of the dissent, read like a blog post. I made it like 2 paragraphs in, and I'm like, I can't read this because it sounds like a blogger just going off about, yes, I had a full breakfast, and you guys are like giving me weird questions, and I don't like it. It makes me feel icky. That's what I got from her dissent.
Well, like I said, it's an activist,
right,
not a judge. And one of the lines she says in there is, if the Supreme Court doesn't go against Donald Trump on this and allow judges, independent local judges, to make a decision for the entire nation, well, then the entire country is going to hell in a handbasket. That's an opinion. That is a personal. That's not a professional opinion. That's not a judicial opinion. That is an activist saying that I have a political preference. That's not her job. Not even close. The one good thing that comes out of this is that for the rest of the time as she's a Supreme Court justice, none of the other judges are ever going to take her serious. She's an embarrassment and not qualified. She'll never convince any of the judges about anything in the time she's there. She's a waste of time, and we know how she's going to vote in everything going forward. Whatever the activist position would be, that's her position. She's a waste of time. She's an embarrassment. Has nothing to do with the color of her skin, has nothing to do with her gender. It is her actions that are speaking louder than anything else. And it is embarrassing that she is a Supreme Court justice. I said it before, I say it now. There is, and it's her own words that prove it. And kids today think she's great but she's black. I'm like, that's not a reason. That's just, she's a woman. That's not a reason. It's just not.
From a constitutional perspective, I would imagine that if a district judge was to make an injunction, it would only apply to that district or to the state.
Now that's the case.
Yeah. So
prior to that, as an example, if your local district judge said that for whatever a case comes up and they say that if green, you want to go across, if you're walking and you have a red light and you're walking across a civilian is walking across the crosswalk, but the car can still drive. They just overrule the driving conditions. Say, nope, the law says I can drive right through the crosswalk with a red light, no problem, as people are crossing. That, according to Ketanji Brown Jackson, that has to be the rule for the entire nation. At the same time, that other judges are going, no. Red means stop, green means go. She said no. She said no. Then we have to change it. That's what she said.
I wonder if some district court decided to come down with a ruling that said that appointments made by a president signed in auto pen are invalid, and they can prove that that the one that signed hers was an auto pen, whether she'd side with that judge.
Well, according to her decision, you'd have to accept it. You have to. And there's a lot of both silly and serious examples of, and this is why Judge Amy Cohen Barrett said, I'm not even going to talk about this. It's stupid because it violates the Constitution, violates legal precedent. It makes no legal sense. It is useless. Might as well have me on the Supreme Court. Might as well have me, because it's just as dumb. Not that I'm an idiot, nor that she is. It's that this isn't judicial, and it makes no sense. So, I mean, there's that. And I mean, that was one of the big stories, and people have been talking about it, and they should be. And that's a problem for our Supreme Court going forward, because we're probably going to get more people like her rather than less of them going forward. And that's terrifying to me.
Yeah. Because all that does is it fills the judiciary with activism as opposed to actual interpretation of the law based on the Constitution.
Yeah.
Well, it's just fulfillment of the prophecies made in the movie Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Never seen that movie. Never seen it.
You did yourself a favor.
It's not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a foreshadowing. But it is a foreshadowing with people, when you say, "Oh, that could never happen," and you're like, "Oh, I don't know."
And here I am,
kind of getting close.
See,
or Demolition Man.
Well, no, I didn't. That one I did see, and actually,
Demolition Man, I think, is aside from the.
It's L.A.
Aside from the futuristic fight scenes where people can dodge bullets and fall down, get blown up and get back, a lot of that what's in that movie is that.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, but the principles behind that movie, you could see how they could easily just with a little push. Become.
What are you talking about? They are already there. LA is burning. The gangs are taking over. It's ridiculous what we're seeing over there. Right.
No, well, what you see in Demolition Man is the aftermath of the gangs burning everything, where instead they didn't quell everything; they just pushed it underground. And they built utopia on top of it. You still have the hellacious situation run by a class of ideological purists who have to believe that it's only their way, and it's the environmentally friendly the world is made of sponge people, and the seedy dark underground just happens to now live in the sewer. California just happens to be an open sewer.
Well, there's two different parts to the movie we're talking. I'm talking about the beginning, where Phoenix is in LA, which takes place theoretically in the movie of Demolition Man. It's taking place in our current, and the rest of the movie's past. So that section is correct for LA
that's today.
Right now. And then the rest of the movie, which takes place in the future, is what it will become. And I agree with you on that. So
and everything that you see in that movie is what's being pushed in California today.
Right, that's where they're trying to get to.
They're on that cusp. They're on that cusp of hiding everything and just putting utopia in place and go, look, we're fine.
Where you're gonna get fined for your language. You're gonna walk by a microphone and it's gonna spit something out at you. It's a ticket to appear because
they're trying to control language now. They have rules out there in colleges at the least, where they do control language. We see that coming out.
Dude, look at your algorithm for your internet. Look at your algorithm for your internet, and you look at what you can say and what you can't say anymore. You can't tell the stories. You can't tell a news story anymore using words that have any sort of negative connotation without the computer algorithm picking it up and blacklisting it. You can't use the word. No, you can't use
the word. The connotation for a political agenda. They can use all kinds of words. Like I can say almost anything I want without the algorithm flagging it. If it's attacking Trump, Republicans, MAGA, that's all perfectly fine. I use the same words, but it refers to Democrats, progressives, and suddenly you're flagged and no one can see your stuff.
You would say you can't. There are words you can't use that describe crimes. You can't use the word assault. You can't use the word murder. You can't use the word rape. You can't use sexual assault. You can't use it. There's a whole list of words that you can't use. You can't use the word gun. You can't use the word shooting. You can't use the word shoot, any derivative thereof. I'm watching these channels that do like these analyses of police stoppages. You know, when the cop stops somebody and they rate how the police did, how the suspect or the citizen did, you know, during the confrontation or whatever it is, and they're giving legal analysis of the situation based on the constitutionality, the stop, civil rights, and everything else, and every other friggin' word is silenced in the audio. And when you go to look at the closed captioning, you put the closed captioning on for the script, you know, to actually read what's being said, because you're missing a lot of it. You'll have words that'll just be like the first word and then a bunch of asterisks after it. So you can't even print the word now.
No,
you can't print
no,
the
it's been like that for a while.
Free speech is it's incredible what is happening, and the people that are going about it. I mean, if you use the word sex in any sort of post, in any connotation thereof, you look at it, you see people writing it seggs.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Okay, anything, you can't say killed or murdered, you have to say unalived.
Again, it depends on. There's a lot of people.
Well, Vass, let me finish
Okay,
this.
okay.
What I'm afraid of is the fact that these things have become part of the vernacular. Okay, where now it became, censorship has gotten to the point where acceptance of it has become cool and hip, where you're using words that are restricted. You're using non-restricted words to replace words that are restricted, and you're never using the correct words anymore. You can't say murder, you're saying unalived. If you use the word, if you have to say sexual assault, you have to say SA. You have to now abbreviate and everything to get around the censorship bots that are out there, and it's become part of our vernacular where it's so commonplace, people are not using it. They're being conditioned to live within the censorship bubble, and they're accepting it. They're not challenging it. They're not fighting it. And this is where the real danger is, because that conditioning is what's led us to places to believe that healthcare is a human right, that this is a right, that housing is a right, that universal pay is a right. They're doing this, and it's one of those things where it's mission creep. Everything is changing little by little, and the people on our side who are supposed to be the ones fighting it, we're adopting it. We're adopting it, and we're altering our own speech patterns and our own languages just so that we can't, just to avoid being censored.
Yeah.
Now, it's wrong at every level. It's wrong. And it's happening every day, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. You can't hear a presidential speech now on CNN without them bleeping non-curse words that they just are afraid people are going to be offended by. This is getting way out of hand.
Well, there's components to this. When for most of social media, and depending on the platform, depending on a couple of factors, it's context driven more than anything else. But because it is more common on some of the biggest platforms, then we're getting the trailing effect, like you said. And younger people haven't been taught to critically think for themselves, so they don't consider that a problem. They don't know the difference. They don't know what the words are that they're losing and they're not hearing. And most people don't actually seek out, because there are venues that allow you to hear the whole thing, to get things in context. But people have been trained to only hear 2 sentences out of a 3-hour speech, so they don't have any idea. And worse than that, perhaps, maybe not worse than that, but in conjunction with that, adding to the problem isn't just what we're taking out, but it's also what they're putting in. I'll give you a great example of that. And it's in popular media now. We see this a lot. think about there was this TV show just came out on Disney. It's called Ironheart. Have you? I doubt if you've seen it, but have you?
No,
Okay.
no, I haven't watched it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't watch Disney.
Okay. It's Marvel. It's the MCU, or
It's
their
Disney.
Disney's version of the MCU. And this character, which is written by, this is a show produced by Black people, written by Black people, starring Black people. The secondary characters are Black people. Literally, there's like one person. All the white people are either bad, or actually, they're all bad guys. Everyone who's white happens to be bad people on the show. But that's the face of it in the summary. The details of it, which has been highlighted by many people, and this is an unpopular show. It's going to disappear by Friday. No one's ever going to talk about it again. It's that unpopular. The fact is, the portrayal of what is being put out there. Ironheart is supposed to be a superhero in the vein of Iron Man. In fact, they try to promote it that she's better than Iron Man because she's Black and a woman, and that's it. She's a Black woman, so she's better than Iron Man. She's more capable. By the way, in the show, she's an absolute willful criminal. In the first 20 seconds, she admits to criminality, that she's breaking the law, she's breaking the rules of her institution. Within the first 2 minutes, she commits so many crimes that she loses her free ride in MIT. And she follows that up by committing even more acts of crime. She steals constantly. She's forging documents. She's doing plagiarism. She then moves on throughout the show to commit bigger and bigger crimes, including, and leading up to in the first 3 episodes, she's responsible for killing people. She's killing people. This is supposed to be someone that is a hero, not just a hero, a superhero. This is someone that on The View, Whoopi Goldberg and the other members are saying this is representative of and a uplifting role model for women and everyone. And now consider that the worst attribute, something that would normally be the history and origination of a villain, in particular, a supervillain. This is a supervillain's storyline. And this is now considered the hero. Consider that and add in, and you can't talk about it because, like you said, Frank, most of the words you would use to describe it in the context, in correct context, I can't say.
Well,
That's the big danger.
Well, here's what it's called now, and I've been sitting here reading while I've been listening to you. It's called algo speak.
What? Oh, yes,
Algo
Oh,
speak.
okay, yeah, I got
A
it.
way to speak around the way to fool the algorithm. And this is instead of people demanding enough with censoring everybody, let people just say what they have to say. No, we are capitulating and conforming to now work around this algo speak and using that as part. Now, what happens, the old phrase, when they came for this one, no one said anything that, what happens when these words, when the algorithm says, hey, they're not using this word for that word anymore. Now they're using this word. So now you can't say this. Now you can't say that. We're going to wind up being like one of them freaking African tribes over there where we speak in clicks. It's getting fucking ridiculous now.
Well,
you can't use words. We can't use words anymore.
What they call that in entomology, actually, which is the study of language and words, it's called creole. And one of the dangers of creating creole to circumnavigate censorship, which was actually very popular in Soviet countries back in the day, because they needed to create language in order to circumnavigate censorship, like you're talking about. This creole would actually wind up losing vocabulary and meanings and definitions, so that whole portions of language would suddenly become dead and wouldn't be understood. And a good example of that, if anybody's watched the original Star Trek, there is a particular episode that I'm thinking of where Kirk and Spock end up landing on a planet, and the people there speak a very weird sort of English, and they can't figure it out. And one of the guys there is trying to justify his lordship over these other people, and he's reading a document.
The Crows.
Kirk looks at it and he goes, "You don't even know what you're talking about. This is the U.S. Constitution."
Mm-hmm.
But everything this guy is saying is a bastardized form of the English that was originally the document of the Constitution, and that has a completely different meaning than everything else that you've been, that has come before it. The meaning has been lost, and so now you have something that is subverted, that is bastardized, that is inverted in some cases, and the original meaning is completely lost. And the power that comes from those words, and the emotion and the drive and ambition that those words can inspire, is now lost. Yeah. That's why it's so important to push back against this kind of censorship.
Well, just think about the literary masterpieces that we would have to forego if we adopted this line of censorship about what words you can use and what words you can't. I mean, forget about just War and Peace itself would be thrown out. But here's a list I just pulled up this on Wikipedia. If you want, you can't say the word lesbian anymore. It's the dollar bean. If you want to talk to the pandemic or COVID-19, as you know, Vass, now you have to call it the panoramic or the panini. The sex worker is an accountant. To kill, murder, or somebody dead is now unalived.
Yep.
A lot of these words. A lot of these words aren't accurate. By the way, it's coming from the New York Times, and the New York Times is biased, and is part of the reason why this is happening.
Well,
but also,
I cross-referenced this list on a spreadsheet as well while we were looking. And these, I know for a fact, are words that some of the algorithms go after. Ass, weed, child pornography, firearm, suicide, abortion, hatred, TikTok, white, Caucasian. Now white is white, WT. You can't call somebody, now a pandemic is the Panda Express. If you have to say somebody was raped, they were graped. You have to now use that. One. My favorite word of all time, fuck, is now fork. Any sort of mental or physical whatever has to be known as a tism. Yeah. That's how they get away with that. Whether it's autism,
I've seen it.
That's what they're just using it as. These are the words they're using as blankets. Like for abortion, it's camping. It's called camping.
That's a
suicide is a sewer slide. A firearm is a pew pew, which I friggin' hate. I hate that to no end. If you refer to child pornography, you could be telling a story about somebody who got arrested for child pornography. If you use the words child pornography, you're going to get censored.
But here's the thing.
You didn't commit child pornography. You're telling somebody about someone who got arrested for it, and you get censored for it.
Yep.
Yes, but here's the thing about that. An important aspect of it, to put it into proper context, all of those workarounds aren't for the approved messengers. This is every word that they have out there, every suppression tactic they have, and it's been around for a long time, aren't for NBC, CBS, New York Times, any of the approved media circles that push the approved messaging. They get to say those things every day. But you and me and people who've been doing political commentary, punditry, who are not part of the approved media, the establishment, the major mainstream media, everyone else gets punished for it. Everyone else. So you have, and that makes it a problem, because now we can't critique, as an example, in talking about either the Ironheart TV show as an example, or talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court justice. They want us to be unable to intelligibly convey the reality because they want the approved message. So the approved message goes out, and anyone who understands English can understand the approved message. Anyone who wants to understand the interpretation or the consequences of these things, well, you're not going to understand it unless you know the proper translation word. If you have the right map and the right keywords to unlock the true meaning, you're going to listen to it and you're going to be lost. And that's part of the problem and that's the control factor. That is the massive control factor, and that's being pushed by many elements of the media, but mostly this is something we see coming from the left, who are out there trying to control every voice that doesn't say exactly what they want it to say. It's coming from the colleges. And the education system. That's why they want a Department of Education. They control. If you control, and I've said this before, if I can control the words you say, I control how you think, because words are just a function of thought. It is the way we convey whatever is going on in our head to everyone else. If I control what you say, then I'm controlling how you're thinking. Therefore, you can't think anymore.
Right.
That's the danger. Right.
And that is absolutely why it is imperative that we try to foster once again a culture in the United States that has freedom of speech, that pushes back against this kind of censorship. That's why it's so important. People can sometimes say, well, we'll just work around it, or, well, it's just this word, we'll just find something else to use. No, that's the danger, because you can look at definitions, and words have power. Words do have meaning. One of the reasons why magic, for example, as a concept, used the word spell was not because they were talking about ritualistic sort of incantations and things. It was literally to create words that reminded you of certain important facets of how to do something. That's why the words had power. Most of these people that practiced magic were actually healers. They were trying to learn folk medicine by utilizing plants and things that helped heal people. And sometimes you couldn't write it down. Sometimes it was passed orally. So you would learn to spell the different plant types and things in order to be able to remember, almost through mnemonics, right? Mm-hmm. How to do something so that you didn't accidentally poison the person you were trying to heal. That's why words have power. They convey meaning, like you say, the thought. So if we continue to allow the dilution of our languages so that thought becomes limited, then we as a people have already moved from being citizens able to master our own fates and self-determine our own way, and we have become subject to those who are unbridled in their thought. And we're not quite there, but we're pretty darn close. Yes. There are still enough independent voices out there that we can still turn this around, but there are so many that are being taught, groomed, for a lack of a better term, in these places of learning, when really they're just being indoctrinated to have their thoughts controlled so they become useful idiots to bring about the influence needed to create and elevate this class of people that have freedom of thought in order to lord it over everyone else. And that's where we see the elites right now. The elites are trying to control your thoughts through language, which is they've been doing for many, many years. This is older than just recently. We're talking like 80 years, 90 years that this has been going on.
Yeah. Since they've been, the more involved government has been in, and it's been a growing, as we've expanded our ability to reach more people more quickly. So like television, radio, then that leads into telephones, that leads into cell phones and internet. In that progression, as you go through that, you've seen there's been more government intrusion and more manipulation in the education system, dumbing down of the public. They both go hand in hand. And the sad thing is, as we're going to celebrate the nation, a quarter century of America, and at the same time, there are fewer people who actually understand what America is,
right,
and don't even know that they should be questioning it in any degree. Whether you're, and I say this, whether you're left leaning, right leaning, it doesn't matter. Most people, it doesn't matter what they profess as their political preference. Most people don't even know.
Yeah.
We've lost so much, and it's really very upsetting. It's kind of like, just to throw this in, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm intermixing a couple things here, but it's kind of like, do you guys know about what the Alligator Alcatraz is?
Yeah, it's a detention center for illegals.
Frank?
Yeah.
You've heard the same thing?
Yeah, I've heard it.
Well, if you're listening to the left-leaning news media, it is a concentration camp.
Oh, yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I saw that they're running with that narrative.
Yeah, this is a deportation center for American citizens. It's for political prisoners. It is slavery. It is indentured servitude. They've come up with a huge list. And just today, it just came out on Newsweek about how the entire place, not only is it's a complete death trap because it was flooding today. By the way, Florida gets a lot of bad weather, a lot of heavy rain. That's expected. They just built the place. They're still fixing the place. It is not done. And they're irrigating. They're in swampy land. This is a former airport, so they have to reroute the way some of the water flows, and they don't really know that until they get done with all the construction. But because it rains in Florida, and it rains heavily in Florida when it does, they're saying, oh, the place was flooded out and everything's washing. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's Florida has hurricanes. And the place is built to handle a Category 2 hurricane. It rained. It didn't get flooded out. But it's that exaggeration coming from the left, who are unfettered in the way they can attack, which is absolutely, right. I think this is an absolutely beautiful idea. I think this is fantastic. They can attack it unfettered, and we are constrained in being able to say why it's not a problem and it's actually a good thing. But go ahead.
You notice we don't hear about anything from the Ukraine anymore?
Yeah,
not for a while. It's going to come back.
Yeah.
It's part of the cycle.
Well, that's the go-to right now. That's the go-to. That's the one that when all these stories lose their luster, they'll always have to go back to there. That's why the media is not in favor of Trump negotiating any sort of a peace deal or peace arrangement there, because as soon as peace goes, there's no story for them to fall back on. But I mean, just look in the last couple of months, all the different stories that have come and go. Where is the staying power in the media when it comes to actually following through with something? I'm actually kind of glad that the media is stuck on ice right now. It's like they walked onto the ice and they can't get off of it. I'm kind of glad that they're stuck there, because the rest of the nation is actually forgetting about all the other bullshit that they've been trying to cram down our throats. And the more they're seeing all these detentions, raids, and deportations going on, the more people are starting to say, wow, I didn't realize there were that many people here that shouldn't be here. The Democrats in the media right now, well, literally, they don't even realize how badly they're shooting themselves in their own foot by highlighting this, because the more that it gets highlighted, the more people are starting to say, 20 million people gone would probably reduce the price of rent, would probably mean less congestion on the highway, would mean that my kid don't have to wait 4 hours in the emergency room. Maybe my kid could get a little bit of a better education, because instead of 55 kids in a class, there's 25. Maybe people start seeing that there's some positivity that can come out of it. the longer it goes and the more that they keep trying to hammer it over our head about this, that, and everything else. Well, look at all these construction sites that are are empty. Well, how many veterans are unemployed?
Well, here's the thing, Frank, because you're right, but you're not. And let me explain what I mean. Because we have seen that the left has come out full-throated in terms of illegal immigration. The Democrats have laid their cards out and said they are in favor of open borders. They're in favor of illegal aliens. They want to use the illegal aliens as slave labor. They want to use them as a second-class citizenry until they can get enough of them so they could turn them into citizens and use them to manipulate the election system. That's what their goal is. It's been described by Kamala Harris on when she was interviewed in October in Philadelphia by ABC News. She explained this all.
Pelosi did too. So did Warren. So did Bernie. So most of them did that.
They've repeated this many, many times, but we're seeing this now in this latest push. And you notice that every poll that has come out about this, about the detaining, the deportations to other countries, the entire process, mass deportations, you know what? The majority of them are at the minimum about 52% to as much as 73%, depending on how you ask the question exactly and which day you ask it. Somewhere between 54 and 73% of America agree, even with all of the manipulation they've been putting out there. But the story is they only put it out in bursts when they think they have a story that's going to get them sympathy. LA, they initially came out with the story because people were rioting. The moment people realized that the people who were rioting were Mexican gangs and cartels, and they were destroying property, and the police were incapable of stopping it, well, they stopped the story. Then Trump said, okay, we're putting in the National Guard and the Marines. Now they got another burst and they came back into the story to say that's unconstitutional, even though they've been proven wrong on that. That's not correct. And then they backed away. The latest wave of what's happening out there, I don't think you guys have ever heard of Cudahy, California.
Cudahy, California. One of my favorite vacation places.
Okay. It's actually in LA County. It's a small city, LA County, Southern California. There is a vice mayor. Her name is Cynthia Gonzalez.
Cynthia.
And now you may not have heard about this. It happened last week when everyone was talking about all the craziness last week. It came out and it got buried because it was only presented as local news. The national news didn't cover this. They didn't want to talk about the story. It is a national story. Cynthia Gonzalez, the vice mayor of a city in California, made a video on social media targeting gangs. She targeted the Florencia 13 and the 18th Street gangs. That's their names. Florencia 13 and 18th Street are two gangs. They're Mexican and Mexican American gangs operating in her community, controlling her community. And she incited them, she encouraged them to go out and attack ICE agents, law enforcement, who were lawfully deporting illegal aliens. And she was encouraging and giving a government-sponsored okay for those gangs to fight and attack and kill ICE agents. As a result, this week we found out that ICE agents now have, those very same ICE agents in that region, their faces, some of them have been identified because sometimes they're not wearing a mask. And those, using face recognition technology, they've been able to identify some of the agents. They found out those agents were married and had kids. And those very same gangs, Florencia 13 and the 18th Street gang, are now threatening their kids. They're going to kill those agents' kids if they continue to deport illegal aliens. And this is because of government.
Okay, bottom line, what are we going to do with this bitch?
What's
going to happen to her?
She's being investigated, actively investigated right now. There's an investigation going on by the FBI. So
see, if I made statements like that, if I came out and made a statement like that, there'd be no investigation. I would have them at my house immediately. They would say, "Oh, there it is. That's the investigation. We here do a snap, do a screenshot. There's the investigation. Go lock this bitch up." I would get locked up. We'd all get locked up. No, now they got to do an investigation. They're going to slow walk it. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. This woman is going to get off scot-free.
Maybe
she might get a sign. She might get a fine of some sort like that. But nothing's going to happen. Somebody will pay a price. Somebody will get killed. Somebody will get hurt. Somebody will get maimed, and she will wind up just having to, I don't know, be censured. She'll get a censure in her office. She'll get a little fine, a 2-week suspension.
I think that is less likely under the Trump administration. Not that it's impossible. Less likely. She's more likely to get an actual punishment.
Let me ask you this. How many people have we seen so far getting a perp walk since January 20th?
Handful.
I haven't seen many. I've seen when it comes to the political class, I haven't seen anybody except that one in Jersey that hit the what do you call it, the ICE agent. Assaulted the ICE agent.
Actually, there was Mayor Baraka, and you're talking about
Mayor Baraka had his charges dropped. The charges got dropped against Baraka.
Yeah, eventually, yes.
That senator who got escorted to the floor and handcuffed for failure to identify himself.
Alex Padilla.
Yeah, Padilla.
He wasn't arrested. He was detained.
Right. He's facing no charges. So I until I see somebody with congressman or senator or vice something or other as part of their title with the handcuffs behind their back, I have no cause to believe that the justice system is working in our favor. Especially, I'm tired of hearing about the process. I'm tired of hearing about.
It's just a reality. It takes time.
Yeah, I know, but we've also said we're going to release the list. We're going to release the list. Why isn't the list released for national security purposes?
I don't equate them as the same thing. I don't equate.
What does that mean? For national security purposes, we can't release the list for national security purposes.
I don't consider them the same thing. Those are two different political problems.
My faith in the system is at 0.001. That's my faith in the system right now. I have practically none, practically no faith in the system right now. The same city that convicted Donald J. Trump of 39 fictitious friggin' charges just let P. Diddy off with 3 of the most serious counts against him, and they were all on video.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so not a whole hell of a lot of faith in the system right now. I also, I don't have faith in, and this is part of my segue. We had the very first time since the inception of the NFA to get short-barreled rifles and shotguns, along with suppressors, out of the hands of the ATF and back in the hands of the American people. But the cowardly pieces of shit Democrats and Republicans decided to capitulate to the House parliamentarian, an elected bureaucrat that was elected from 2012, has been sitting there and decided just unilaterally to strike these things out of the big, beautiful bill on her own because they didn't pass the bird bath. Well, number one, why are we still going by rules established by Robert fucking Byrd? I have absolutely no idea.
I wondered about that. Is that the same? Is that the same bird that was the Cyclops?
Yeah. Why are we still using rules established by a KKK member in the U.S. Senate? Why are we still paying homage to this known racist this piece of garbage that we're allowed, that we're going by his rules. If it's not strictly, about the finances, we can't address it in this, and we can't address. Scrap your birdbath bullshit. The man's been dead for a decade, and he was a piece of shit his whole life. Fire this goddamn parliamentarian who's got absolutely no constitutional authority. Did you know how the office of the parliamentarian wasn't established until 1935? And previous parliamentarians have been fired before, most recently in 2001, and then in 2012 when this one took over. Fire this lunatic. Get rid of it. And here's a little word of advice for Firearms Policy Coalition, NRA, Gun Owners of America. Don't piss on us and tell us it's wonderful news that they, instead of getting rid of the NFA and getting things out of the NFA, that they just reduced the tax to zero and calling it a win. It's not a win. It's not a win at all when I still have to file a piece of paperwork and get permission from the federal government to protect my hearing.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that I'm paying the $200 tax, which was aimed at gangsters. Okay, so we're all being penalized because of gangsters. Okay, we're all Al friggin' Capone over here.
In the 1930s,
right?
yeah.
All right. So 1930s, they established the NFA so that they could put a huge tax on things. They still want the tax money, but we're gonna do you a favor. We're gonna eliminate the tax. If they sell 1 million suppressors a year in this country, that would be $200 million in tax stamp. That doesn't pay for Nancy Pelosi's booze bill. All right, they don't give a flying shit about the $200. They never have. It's a control issue. They need to control it.
Yeah.
And the Republicans who allowed this to take place and didn't say to Mike Johnson, fire this lunatic bitch out of here, get her out of here,
John
and
Thune,
put somebody else in there. Or better yet, let's just vote to get rid of the parliamentarian. This is not Great Britain. This is not Canada. We do not have a parliament. If you're concerned about whether or not items in a bill conform with the rules and regulations in the Constitution, then I got something you can do. Read the Constitution. Don't delegate to some non-elected bureaucrat to decide for the rest of the 330 million people in America what's in a bill and what's out of a bill. Read the Constitution so you know what to put in the bill in the first place. Know the Constitution so that when you read the bill after it's been written by other people, you know whether it's constitutional, and then vote on it. You're not making us win by taking away the $200 tax stamp. The only way that we win is by regaining our freedom, and that means not to have to capitulate to the federal government like can I have some more, please? Can I have some more? Well, I'm not Oliver.
Yeah.
I'm not Oliver. I'm a free American citizen, and I deserve to do whatever the hell I want to do. And you have no right telling me whether or not I can run a can on my gun. You have no right to decide whether or not I want to use a short-barreled rifle or shotgun to defend my home. I have to pay you money and get your permission to defend myself and my family and my house and my community the way I see fit. Shall not be infringed means something. And for all you gun groups that are out there, GOA, NRA, Firearms Policy Coalition, you're all out there talking a big friggin' game about how this is a win. Where is your fight? Where is your fight? I'll tell you where your fight is. Your fight is in your wallet. This is what you're concerned with. You're concerned about this because as soon as you wind up getting rid of the ATF, you have outlived your usefulness. And if we don't need you, you have no reason to get membership. You have no reason to raise money. Just like the politicians who create a problem and then raise money to try and figure out how they can, say, we'll fix it next time around.
Unions. I was thinking unions.
All of these,
Yeah.
every one of these groups, their number one focus should be their own abolition. They should have the end and say, we only exist to become obsolete. That's what a group's supposed to belong to. If everybody was getting their civil rights, you wouldn't need civil rights organizations. So civil rights organizations have it within their best measure to hope that people's rights get violated, because then they got something that they can go raise money on. They got something they can campaign on. Got something they can lobby on. Gun groups are the same thing. If the government stayed out of our lives with guns and everybody could do whatever the hell they want to, as intended by the founders, we wouldn't need GOA or Firearms Policy Coalition or NRA or Liberty First Foundation, for that matter. We wouldn't need any of these organizations to do anything.
Yep.
I'm hoping for the day that we're all free enough that we don't need somebody to defend our rights, because as American citizens, they're enshrined in our Constitution and we have them. No one would be stepping on them. But because we have a government controlled by fallible, selfish, greedy, corrupt pieces of shit, this is what we have to do with. They're going to say, oh, it's a big win. But oh, don't worry, next year we'll get rid of it. And we'll get rid of it next year. Just pay another fee, pay another yearly membership, pay another fine, pay another this, pay another that. We'll get to it next time. Screw that shit. I'm tired of it.
Okay. Before you respond, Dal, I know there's a lot for you there, and I do see a
Tell me I'm
comment
wrong
from
about
Sharon.
any of that.
I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that one of the things I was going to say is part of the biggest problem with all of these agencies, whether it's the GOA or the ACLU or the one of the unions, the dock workers union, whichever union you want to point to, they all have, and members of Congress, whether the Senate or the House, yeah, they thrive on the problem, not the solution. And that's part of the problem. It's the corruption that inevitably keeps them going, and they don't want solutions. They just want to make you live with it. It's kind of like we haven't cured anything since polio. Well, you just live with it. AIDS, you live with it now. You don't ever get cured of it. So that's kind of crazy. But Dal, it's been a little while. I know we got a comment from Sharon, who's there, and I think maybe Frank bring that up. But Dal, we threw a lot into there. Go ahead.
So one of the reasons that the Senate can have a parliamentarian, and that they put this in, is they snuck in the parliamentarian position under the constitutional section for rules. The fact that the Senate can make their own rules and processes. Same thing for the House. So the Senate actually created in 1935 the parliamentarian position in order to basically oversee, as a sort of in-house editor, basically, to look at procedure, make sure that it's within line for the rules, and is basically an oversight for the Senate. Now, that's not how the position has been used. But that was his intention on its inception, was that it was supposed to be sort of like a rules oversight individual. And I think there's only been about 8 of them. And of the 8 parliamentarians, there were 6 of them, and 2 of them served twice. So it really is not a popular position. It's one that is very political, one that is very one-sided, and is almost like having an activist in-house. And depending on who you put in the position will either hurt or hinder your ability to bring bills to the Senate floor. It really shouldn't exist. It really shouldn't.
No,
but
it shouldn't.
But it does. But it does under the rules of the Senate, and that's how they.
Well, we'll put it this way: when you delegate somebody else for your own responsibility that you got elected to, it's wrong.
Correct.
That's what listen, we're going to just keep going into the smoke-filled rooms, drinking our bourbon and brandy and having our cigars. You tell us what's right, what's wrong. We don't got time to do our fucking job. That's what it is. That's what that's all about. Okay?
And that's exactly what they've done with the executive branch for the last, 70 years, is that they've been trying to coalesce more and more responsibility in the executive branch so that Congress can just show up, get a paycheck, and go on vacation.
Yeah, well, Mike Johnson has it within his authority to do 2 things: completely ignore the parliamentarians' suggestions, either by line item or in totality, or
Right.
to fire this person and appoint a new one. If it comes down to J.D. Vance having to be a tie-breaking vote, J.D. Vance can go in and ignore the parliamentarian because
That's correct.
J.D. Vance is the president of the Senate. He can go in and just say, nope, that's it. I'm putting these things back in and sign it into law. What's the worst that's going to happen? Somebody's going to take the big, beautiful bill to the Supreme Court, and they're going to argue about this, and they're going to take the whole bill to the Supreme Court over the NFA.
That actually is one thing that they were talking about with the $0 tax, is the fact that the NFA has historically been upheld within the SCOTUS because it is a tax. There is money involved. Now that the money has been removed, that opens up the ability for people to actually take the NFA to SCOTUS, and because the tax no longer has money involved, it's now an infringement because it is strictly a registry.
Exactly. But here's where, again, politicians have decided to slow walk the ball and cost the American people tens of millions of dollars and another decade of legislation, to instead of just doing what they're supposed to do, and that's uphold the Constitution from the beginning. The NFA shouldn't belong there in the first place. It
Correct.
doesn't belong there now. They could save us all a lot of time and trouble. But believe me when I tell you, all of these different groups that are out there that make their money on memberships are all too happy. They're all too happy to make this compromise because that gives them something that they can, quote unquote, fight for later on.
And that's the unfortunate part about a lot of this, is that you don't see the fight that needs to happen. Like when, for example, when the continuing resolution was in play, right, and they're talking about, well, we need the CR at the Biden administration spending levels just so that we can get down the road to argue out the big beautiful bill and do reconciliation. I was saying at the time, why? You have the mandate. Fight now. If you don't and you continue to delay, all you're going to do is give the opposition to anything that you try later on more ammunition to try and set you up. And they did it this last time in the Senate. And I actually have a screenshot here from Newsweek, archived, of course, because I don't want to give Newsweek the clicks. And one of the things that the Senate has recently done to Trump's big beautiful bill by kicking it back over to the House is they actually put a poison pill in the bill. The poison pill is in regards to gambling. It doesn't have anything to do with the 2A. The big beautiful bill, and this is from Newsweek in the political section. It was published on today at 10:41. The headline is Trump's big beautiful bill could kill professional gambling, and the version from the Senate that's been put into the House now says that gamblers are able to deduct from their winnings to 90% of their losses. What this means to people on average, and they're using big numbers for wins. So the math goes like this. If a gambler wins $100,000 in a tax year while also losing $100,000, they would be required to pay $10,000 in taxes despite breaking even, rather than zero tax paid under current regulations. So essentially what they've done is they've taken gamblers and they've created the capital gains tax for gamblers. The unrealized, you remember the unrealized gains that they were trying to do under the Biden administration? You guys remember that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what they've done is they've put this poison pill in for gamblers where it's like, hey, guess what? You go in with $100, you leave with $100, but we're going to total up all the wins that you had that night, even though you broke even, and you're going to have to pay taxes on all the money that you could have won but didn't win because you left breaking even. This is unrealized gains tax, but it's for gamblers. It's a $172 billion industry. If they pass this bill, if the Republicans push this through, then the Democrats have ammunition to turn around and say, look what they did to your entertainment. You can't do sports betting anymore without being taxed. You can't go to the casino anymore without being taxed. You can't do any kind of like localized lottery without being taxed on the unrealized gains that you could have won X amount of dollars. And what are they going to do with that? They're basically the conservatives and the Republicans specifically. Some of these Republicans are very moralistic type of Puritans, right? So they're going to look at this and they're going to be like, gambling is bad. You know, it's a degenerate practice. We're okay with like regulating gambling this way. If they pass this bill, the Democrats can turn around and use it as ammunition for the midterms. And they're going to be like, look, your taxes may have gone down under the Trump tax cuts that are enshrined in the bill, but they're taxing you more on your entertainment. They shafted you and you took it. Now, if they say no, then what it is, well, you're not willing to protect the American people from themselves.
Well, then they better go after people who day trade and play the stock market.
Right.
Because that's
just
gambling too.
It's going to open the door to the unrealized gains that the Democrats wanted. And that's the problem with not sitting down and doing your job when you have the opportunity to do it. They should never have passed the CR. They should have locked themselves in chambers until they were able to hash out a proper budget. And
Yeah,
they decided,
but they're
They're
never going to do their job because it takes away from their fundraising ability.
and that's correct.
Because the worse government runs, the better chance they have of being reelected.
True.
Period.
And that's the problem, is that there are not just 3 branches of government. There are 5, right? You have the executive, you have the legislative, you have the judicial. Then you have the unofficial 4th house, which is your supposed to be your media, your watchdogs. The 5th house is supposed to be a check on all of them. That's us. We're the 5th house. The only way that you get these people to actually do their jobs is you have to basically camp out on their desk and be like, I'm not going home until you do the will of your constituents.
I wish that was the case.
It boggles my mind that we do that. How many states have legislation that when their representatives does not do their job, they can recall their representatives and fire them on the spot? How many?
Several of them have it. No one knows about it, nor does it happen.
Right.
Not in the last 100 years.
It's like 7 states have recall powers for representatives that don't do their job. Everybody else is fine with it because we've been taught to be fine with it because we don't understand our own system of government. People have forgotten that we, as the 5th house, under the sovereignty of the Constitution, have the power to give authority to our representatives. We can take it away.
Well, part of it too is don't refer to us as the 5th house. Refer to us as the 1st house, because I'm pretty sure those documents all begin with a phrase like "we the people," not
That's
we the
correct.
government, we the representatives.
It's
not we the president.
Absolutely, I stand corrected.
We are the 1st house, and we run the press. The press would not exist without we the people. The government would not exist without we the people. We are the people. And that's why they said if you pick the first 500 names out of the phone book, you'd have a better running government than what you do right now. All right, listen, guys, we only got about another 5 minutes to go. I got to log out a little early because I've got a bright and early day tomorrow ahead of me. Next week, we should be back across our entire spectrum of channels again. We've had a little bit of an issue with our streaming service. And that issue is financial. It's expensive as hell to run this show, especially when you go into 12 different channels every week. So we're trying to come up with the funds and the financing in order to do that. If you'd like to help out, you go to the Liberty First Foundation, L1F.us, and look for the donation link. We could use a hand there if you can. Any little bit helps. If you can, I'll put up a link later this week. We're going to start doing it. We're going to do something we've never tried to do. We've never taken advertising on the channel, and we've never asked anybody for money. But at this point right now, it's getting to the point where we are starting to gain a good deal of momentum. And in order for us to keep that momentum going and keep it alive, we're going to ask for the audience to give us a little bit of hand if you support what we're doing, if you like the conversation, if you like the arguments that Vass, myself, and Dal and Marshall get into. We could sure use a little bit of assistance in that category. We're going to try and do some merch. I hate that word. Merchandise sales soon enough.
Merchandising.
And pay attention to the Range Report YouTube channel with updates on the Ultimate Alpha Challenge, which you guys can be a part of. That's going to be huge. Vass, give us a plug for where we can find you, what we can do, and all the rest of that.
Everyone can find me at No Soundbites Allowed. That's with an I, as you can see. And you can find me there on and off throughout the entire week, across every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do a live stream, goes out across the world. We've been doing it for 8 years now, with interaction with people, either calling in or sending in chats and super chats and all that, covering all of these issues in the detail that they deserve. Not 30 seconds, not a minute and a half, but we actually take the time to answer your question and to give you the background, the details you need to make a decision for yourself. It's part of the freedom of free speech. You also get a right to choose.
Vass runs a really tight and classy ship over there on his channel, mostly because I'm not there. So you don't get some of the colorful banter that you get over here, because I am literally like an old-fashioned coffee pot, no filter. That's how I am. Dal, give us a shout about where we can find you too.
You can find me right here with the Liberty First Foundation on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock. And I also have a channel that I am building over in Rumble. It's Grim Liberty over on Rumble. And one thing I want to quickly address, lest we be called hypocrites. We are asking for donations because we're all a bunch of working stiffs. Like we pay out to try and help each other get things on the show. We're not asking for memberships just because we want to stay in business. We want to actually become obsolete, where everyone understands what their freedom is. We want everyone to be educated as to what it means to be liberty first. And then eventually we may not have to do this anymore. Then we can just talk as friends. We don't have to actually be part of a movement. So please, please, please get educated on civics, get educated on the Constitution. Come to us if you want. There are plenty of other organizations out there, but just please, for the love of God, help us, help you save America and make America great again, because this country is worth it. Absolutely. There is no other country on the planet that is better an example of in its founding of what it means to be free. And we need to preserve that, because the entire world has lived under subjugation for so long, and it doesn't have to be that way. We can be citizens and determine our own destiny. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the content, and we will see you next week.
One quick thing before I go. Didn't want to make it a personal thing, but I want to do this. Come on. Where is it? Oh, I hate this. I wish I knew how to work this thing.
You're doing fantastic there.
A little bit better.
You're doing it as good as I did at the beginning of the program.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Well, damn it. I don't know where the hell it is. All right.
You're trying to bring up the fight, aren't you?
No, I was trying to bring up a different window, but I don't remember how to do it on this thing. See, part of the problem is we've gone back to our basic program on this particular broadcasting thing, and because we've done that, we've not been able to. All of my functions are different than where they were. So now when I'm trying to find something, I can't find them. Mm-hmm. So when I'm over here trying to look for something, I'm like, what the hell is everything? So I can't do it. Shit. Can't do it. All right. Listen.
Do you have the present box? The present box will give you a list of the different windows you have.
Yeah, I know, and that's part of the problem is that I can't figure out how the hell to use it, because I'm an idiot for one thing. Oh wait, hold on. Maybe this will work. There we go.
There you go.
Tomorrow would be my mom's 88th birthday. On July 3rd. You guys know that coming up on the 2-year anniversary of my mom's passing. I miss her every day. It kills me that she's not here with me. We've had a tremendous amount of success and things moving forward in the last year or so that I know she would be very proud of, not only myself, but all of us as a team. And, you know, she was always very encouraging for the things that I was trying to do, and she always knew that there would be brighter days and a new horizon. And, you know, tomorrow, she always thought that the fireworks on the 4th of July were us celebrating for her a day late. But, you know, I just want to say,
Good for you, Mom.
I love my mom something fierce. I miss her every day, and I just wanted to say, Ma, happy birthday. We all love you.
May her memory be eternal.
And that was it. That was my one little thing. I was going to show footage of the hummingbird that we've got on our feeder outside, but yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, hold on. Maybe I can do it. Yeah, so
there you go.
So I got this hummingbird feeder with a Wi-Fi camera built into it, and every time a hummingbird comes by, the camera goes on, and you could see this. And in the middle of the night, it's funny because you'll see it light up with bats. Bats will come over and have a drink. Yeah, bats will come over and have a drink too. But yes, that's the backyard, and right there in that little corner where the bird is, that's our Alpha Challenge official Ultimate Alpha Challenge
Target.
Sanctum 1791 target, where we do some of our videos. So,
knife throwing and axe throwing, right?
Yeah. So we're nature lovers here. Yeah. So we love nature. We love animals, and with that, all of our animals got to go out and take a leak, including this one. So we'll catch you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. You guys be safe. Shoot straight. We love you. Thank you very much. We'll catch you guys next week.